Yes.
Jeff, are you ready? Jeff, are you ready? Jeff, can you hear us? Well, now I'm wishing Danny hadn't left the room. Jeff, are you there? Danny, can you Jeff, can you hear us?
Judge, before we begin, while we're waiting for the others, do you mind if we ask a question?
Sure.
Will we have flex time, or is flex time taken out? No flex time? Thank you.
I'm really sorry, guys, but I don't want to start until we at least get confirmation from Jeff that he could hear us. Well, disappeared, so that's a sign he could not hear us. Maybe he's logging off and logging back in to fix the problem. But I did send an email to Danny, so he'll probably return to the room. Jeff, can you hear us now? Jeff, are you here? Danny, I'm really not sure.
Okay, let's see. Let me try to send him a message. All right, just try to send him a message. Are you all set to judge, Jeff?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Good luck, everybody.
So you are here, Jeff?
I have been waiting for quite some while. Let's get the show on the road.
Well, we've been calling for you and haven't been able to get a response from you, so...
Sorry.
That's
I
okay.
was drifting in and out.
Okay, well, we're all ready then. This is being live streamed, so if the other judges could turn on their cameras, that would be great.
All right, I'd first like to start off by saying a big thank you to our three judges here today, as well as to our opponents and to my partner as well for engaging in this educational debate. So with that said, let's jump right into it. The resolution we are given today is vegetarian diets do more harm than good. So let's launch into the resolutional analysis. So point A, our definitions. Let's begin by defining vegetarian. We define vegetarian as relating to the exclusion of meat and other animal products from the diet. We define diet as the kind of food that a person, animal, or community habitually eats. Harm as an actual or potential ill effect or danger. And lastly, good as a benefit or advantage to someone or something. Subpoint B, our classification for this debate is going to be value, as we're stating that vegetarian diets either do more harm than good or not. And our criteria for this debate is going to be utilitarianism. So this means the most good for the most amount of people. We have three main points today, three main contentions that support the affirmative's case. Firstly, the benefits to physical health. Next, the benefits to mental health. And lastly, the detrimental environment, the disadvantages for physical health, disadvantages for mental health, and lastly, the detrimental environmental implications caused by vegetarian diets. So beginning with physical health, we can see that the main idea is that there are vitamins as well as nutrients according to Women's Health 2017, such as glutamate, B vitamins, and iron. Similarly, by Baton Rouge Clinic, October 1st, 2021, vitamins such as B and D, as well as calcium, iron, many other vitamins. These are not available in many plant-based diets, whereas they're only available in meat-based ones. And so we can see with these two sources that there is a definite lack there in terms of vegetarian diets. Now, how does this cause more harm than good? Well, we can see that many of these, such as calcium, iron, many of these vitamins, they help the blood sugar and hormone levels, and they help stabilize them. So without these nutrients and these vitamins that are necessary in a diet, this increases irritability, depression, and anxiety, as seen by Women's Health 2017. We can also see, according to Euronews, August 17, 2022, that according to a UK study, vegetarian women experienced a 33% more risk of hip fractures later in life than meat eaters. This is due, again, to that loss of nutrients and vitamins that are essential to a diet that are not found in vegetarian diets. Similarly, according to WebMD.com, November 4th, 2019, we can see that 48,000 men and women with no history of heart disease, when they were surveyed for 18 years, it found that they were at 20% higher rate of stroke than meat eaters. So this collects up to around 3 more strokes per year. And this is per 1,000 people per year. And so we can see that there is a definite effect on people as a result of vegetarian diets. Yes, question.
You said that women who did not eat had increased anxiety and other stuff. Is it exclusively due to not eating meat?
For the women in particular, this was Euronews August 17, 2022, 33% more risk of hip fracture for women. For the irritability, this was Women's Health 2017. This was for all people, not just women.
Or was it exclusively due to not eating meat, was my question.
Yes, this was due to the lack of the vitamins and nutrients due to a vegetarian-based diet. Okay, continuing on, the next point is the detrimental effect on mental health. So we can see, as mentioned earlier, there is an increase in irritability, depression, and anxiety as a result of the instability of blood sugar and hormone levels due to a vegetarian diet. This impacts a high magnitude of people. We can also see another study, according to Bon Appetit, October 5th, 2022, according to an Australian research in 2017, 21 to 22% of people that were vegetarian experienced depression, whereas only 15% of meat eaters experienced depression. So we can also see that there is a gap between meat eaters and vegetarians in terms of their mental well-being. And of course, this does do more harm than good. If people are experiencing higher rates of anxiety and of depression and all of these negative effects on their mental health, this is demonstrating that there is an evident higher harm than good as a direct result of vegetarian diets. We can see this supported by MedSpace, December 27, 2022, where they stated that people who had vegetarian diets experienced on average 2 times more depressive episodes than those who eat meat. So we can see, again, this concurs and supports the idea that mental health is negatively affected by vegetarian diets, thus illustrating how vegetarian diets indeed do more harm than good. Going on to our last contention, environmental implications. It is a well-known fact that vegetarian diets do have a positive effect on on emissions. However, the effects that they have on pollution and overall global warming cannot be overlooked. We can see, according to the report for the Worldwide Fund for Nature, August 2021, that vegetarian diet harms environment more than any meat eaters due to the transportation and the exports required for fruits and vegetables and all those needed for to sustain a vegetarian diet. This is further supported by a study by both Carnegie Mellon University as well as the Environmental Systemic Decisions 2015, where they stated that eating lettuce had 3 times more greenhouse gases than eating bacon. This is also proved by the fruits, vegetables, dairy, and seafood resulted in an increase of 38% of energy pollution, an increase in 10% of water of loss of water, and an increase overall of around 10% for greenhouse gas emissions. So we can see that there is, again, a detrimental and devastating impact on the environment, where we're already experiencing a global warming crisis, and vegetarian diets are contributing to this by negatively affecting the environment. This is further supported by sources such as USA Today, July 25, 2019, where there is a major increase in CO2 emissions as a result of a vegetarian diet when compared to that of a meat-based diet. So overall, we can see with this environmental implications, it's affecting soil pollution, air pollution, water depletion, as well as general greenhouse gases. And this cannot be overlooked. This is a sign of doing more harm than good. And for these 3 reasons, the physical health, effect on physical health, mental health, and the detrimental environmental implications, that you should vote for the affirmative team today.
So just give me a minute to pull up my timer. Okay, so I'm going to start my time now. As an avid vegetarian, this is a very important issue to me. So I'm looking forward to discussing this even more. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, judges, for judging. I know it's starting to get late, at least here out in the West Coast. Hopefully it's not the West Coast, in the Midwest. Hopefully it's not quite so late out on the West Coast. So let's get this ball rolling. Okay, so we're going to touch on resolutionary analysis, and then we're going to hit the affirmative case, and then we're going to talk about the contentions on the negative side. So without any further ado, we will agree to the fact that this is a value round, essentially. Like, we were going to call this a fact round, but we're weighing essentially the same thing, so it doesn't really matter to us. But we are going to disagree, or rather clarify the definition of vegetarian. We just want it to be the exclusion of meat from the diet. So essentially, we don't want to include animal products in this, just because not eating animal products and meat is veganism, which is different than being vegetarian. So I just wanted to make that clear so that we aren't jumping to too many conclusions, but otherwise we agree to all of their definitions. So with that, I'm going to jump onto the affirmatives case. So first, they said that there are physical disadvantages to being strictly vegetarian. So essentially, they said that there are vitamins and minerals that you can only get from a meat-based diet. This is untrue. Many fruits and vegetables and juices and any other kind of plant-based product is going to be fortified with different nutrients, such as calcium. Most of our broccoli, for example, is fortified with calcium. So this is not a harm that is unique to this kind of diet. So if you're eating the right kind of food and you're balancing it and being active about it, it is not really a harm to a vegetarian diet. In addition, we also have the ability to take vitamins. Vitamins are, in fact, a great alternative if you don't want to eat meat and you don't want to feel morally bad about eating meat. So we have easy solutions to these supposed problems, even though they aren't problems, because most of our veggies and plants are already fortified with these important nutrients. So it's really a non-issue and not any sort of actual disadvantage to having a vegetarian diet. Second, mental health. The affirmative is claiming that all anxiety and depression, or at least most anxiety and depression, can be traced to having a vegetarian diet, which I don't think is true. This could be a case of correlation does not equal causation. So maybe people who are more likely to become vegetarian in the first place are already predisposed to have anxiety and depression and be more irritable. It doesn't necessarily follow that just because you have a different diet means that you're going to be more depressed. It is far more linked historically to having a family history of anxiety or a traumatic upbringing. So it does not follow that you will have worse mental health if you have a vegetarian diet. Third, they said that there are negative environmental impacts on eating veggies. I don't know exactly. Well, okay, I do know what articles they were looking at. They seem to be at least a little bit outdated, especially because most of the articles that I found said that meat was one of the leading causes of carbon emissions, especially in food, which I will get to later. That's on my case. But essentially, they're saying that, if we spend all of this time transporting our food and growing our food, then this is somehow going to increase carbon emissions, even though we still need to grow like corn and feed in order to feed animals, which is something we will again talk about in our case. So I don't think it really makes logical sense to say that a vegetarian diet made mostly out of plants, cutting out the middleman of cattle and animals, follows that somehow a vegetarian diet creates more carbon emissions. Okay, now that I've talked about the affirmative case, I'm going to jump onto the negative case for you today. So our first contention is the huge carbon footprint of meat. So here in the US, we have a meat packing system. So essentially this means that farms are subsidized to grow so much corn so that we can force feed that to cows so that they can then be traveled into a meat packing plant and then slaughtered and then transport that meat to market. So this gives us carbon emissions from growing that corn. That gives us carbon emissions from moving that cattle and moving that corn to the cattle. This gives us carbon emissions from the meat packing plant and all of the methane that these cows expel, which is, according to a PBS article from 2022, 28 times worse than carbon. Yes. So this essentially is just like increasing all of the carbon emissions and all of the steps and all of the life history of carbon in this cycle of eating meat. So we're not saying you can never eat meat. I'm just saying that it has a very large carbon footprint. So according to a Guardian article from September 2021, meat accounts for nearly 60% of all greenhouse gases emissions from food production. So this is just looking at food production. So we can compare this directly to their 2019 article where CO2 apparently increased the carbon emissions from just vegetarian diets. So these two sources are in direct competition and conflict with each other. I don't exactly recall what source they had, but The Guardian is a reputable news source. It is one of the largest, especially in the UK. So I am more inclined to believe the article that came from 2021 instead of 2019. Okay, now that we've talked about how there is a huge carbon footprint from all of the different steps that get a cow from the farm to on your plate, we're going to move on to 2, the distress of the truth. So meat packing is horribly inhumane. So these cows are force-fed corn, which is acidic, which causes stomach ulcers, which means that they have to be put on antibiotics so that they don't develop infections. And then once people learn the truth about this, they are distressed and they don't want to eat more meat, or they will choose to be willfully ignorant about this fact. So if we look at the how it's made video, or like when people found out how McDonald's chicken nuggets are made, they were horrified. They did not want to know that their chicken was liquefied and then formed into standard nuggets. McDonald's had to campaign heavily against this, but people are less likely to eat meat if they are distressed by it. So it in fact helps people be less distressed to be vegetarian because they don't have to worry about the ethical quandaries of consuming meat, especially in such an unethical system such as meat packing, or if you've ever seen a chicken farm. Like it is horribly gut-wrenching to even see these things. Our third contention for you today is the loss of biodiversity. Essentially, there is corn needed for these cows. And this means that corn is subsidized by the US government in order to create the ability for farmers to only plant corn. This leads to monocropping and farmers only planting corn and soy. So this means that they are more susceptible to disease, more susceptible to pests. And this, again, requires more effort and labor to sustain both the soil and these different plants, just because they are so susceptible that one plant can be entirely wiped out very easily. This means that there is less room, especially considering all of the plant farms and then also all of the animal farms that are taking up space that native plants and animals could be inhabiting. So instead of having miles and miles and acres of native prairie grass, or name your favorite environment, we have rows and rows and rows of corn and rows and rows and rows of soy. So we are losing biodiversity when we have this system, specifically a meat-based system in place. So we can see that there would not be any of these negatives, specifically like the carbon emission footprint of meat, the distress of knowing how your meat came to be on your plate, and the lack of biodiversity if we had more vegetarian diets out there. And with that, I can only vote for the negative. Thank you.
I have a 8-minute speech. Before I begin, I'll be addressing the off case, going on case, in that order. 8 minutes starting now. Good afternoon to the judges. Good afternoon to the negation. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for presenting your case today. On the negations case, beginning with their first counter contention about the carbon footprint of meat. The negations case rests heavily on the fact that meat is bad and the production of meat is very bad for the environment. However, let's relate this to the resolution today that vegetarian diets do more harm than good. Nowhere in the negations case did I see that vegetarians' diets are necessarily doing any good at all. All I heard is that meat itself, the production of meat, is bad. And what I believe the negation is trying to do here is to present the judges with a false dichotomy, saying either you're a meat eater or you're a vegetarian. However, there are alternative diets such as pescatarian diets, which Harvard has said may be one of the best diets for both the environment and individuals. And there are other diets that are not vegetarian, but are avoid the issues of the harms of meat. So nowhere in this carbon footprint of meat do I see that this makes vegetarianism good. They say that cows, the packing of the meat from cows, it releases a lot of carbon emissions. PBS says it's 28% or 28 times worse throughout the life history of packing the meat for cows. However, this large number of carbon coming from meat simply has to do with the fact that there are a lot of meat eaters. And that is one of the primary sources of food. However, that doesn't make vegetarianism good. Nowhere in this first counter contention am I seeing that vegetarian is necessarily good because meat is releasing carbon. Alternatively, what we found from Carnegie Mellon in 2015 is that vegetables require more water and energy, which is bad per calorie to grow. And it resulted in higher levels of greenhouse emissions to produce than meat. So if we were to increase the amount of vegetables to accommodate vegetarian diets across the board, that would be bad because we'd be increasing greenhouse gases. Go ahead.
What exactly do cows eat?
I've never owned a cow. I don't know what cows eat. Care to enlighten me?
Yes, most cows in the United States are fed lots of corn, so they eat plants.
Thank you. Moving on to counter contention 2, that meat packing is unhumane, or this raising of cows, giving them corn, and causing them ulcers is unhumane. Again, here the only tie to vegetarianism that I get from the negation is that vegetarianism gives individuals less stress with ethical quandaries by switching from meat eating to vegetarianism. However, there are many different alternatives, such as a meat eater going from mass-produced meat to hunted meat, which deals with moral quandaries, or from mass-produced meat to local farm-raised meat, where you know they're treating cows right, or free-roam animals. So there are many alternatives, and this doesn't necessarily make vegetarianism good. This just shows that vegetarianism is one alternative, but there are many other alternatives to relying on this system. And on their final counter contention of biodiversity, saying that, again, meat, the process that we use to create meat in the status quo is resulting in monocropping and destroying the environment. However, this again relates to the fact that we're hearing a lot about why meat is bad, but not necessarily why vegetarianism is good. So the only argument I've got out of the neg is that by switching off of a meat diet is good because you avoid all of these harms of meat. But I don't see anything exclusive saying that you either eat meat or you're a vegetarian. There are alternative diets, and there are ways to avoid these harms without switching to vegetarianism. Now, on our first contention, physical health, the negation gave the following response that the vitamins necessary to stabilize blood sugar are less prevalent in a vegetarian diet, therefore increasing irritability, depression, and anxiety. They said that this is untrue because most fruits most vegetables are fortified with calcium, and you could take vitamins, which are a great alternative to eating meat. However, the problem here, and what I found in the report from WebMD in 2012, that meat is more bioavailable than vegetable sources of certain vitamins and nutrients, and that's what leads to the higher rate of irritability and of depression and anxiety. So although we have fortified vegetables and we have vitamins, it's not as bioavailable, meaning that it leads to these issues of depression and anxiety at a higher rate. Additionally, what Euronews found is that women on a vegetarian diet had a 33% increased risk of hip fractures in their life. These are women that ate no meat. So it's not saying that it's not necessarily saying that vegetarianism caused it. It is a correlative event, but the correlation is clear that vegetarian diets have a higher risk of hip fractures because of the vitamins and nutrients that they're missing in the vegetarian diet or not being utilized due to bioavailability. Now, on the second contention, mental health, we cite a few studies about individuals on vegetarian diets having a higher prevalence of anxiety and depression. Again, they say here that this is not causation; it's simply correlation. And what WebMD in 2019 said is that vegetarian diets have shown to have a negative impact on individual moods. What the National Library of Medicine showed is that in a study of 240 vegetarians versus 240 meat eaters, they found 31% of vegetarians had anxiety versus only 13% of meat eaters. And finally, National Library in 2012 found that 24% of vegetarians were depressed as compared to 10% of meat eaters. So vegetarian diets have a much higher rate of depression and anxiety than meat-eating diets. Sorry, I have to respond. I only have 30 seconds. I won't be able to answer your question. And finally, on the third contention of environmental effect, they say that meat is the leading cause of carbon emissions because we still need to feed the animals that this is creating a harm. However, the farming of corn to feed the animals does not present as much greenhouse gases as a result as directly eating these vegetarian sources. And as Carnegie showed, that vegetarian diets produce more greenhouse gases than the meat, all things considered.
Before I begin, just a round of thank yous to everybody. Thank you to the judges for being here. Thank you to the Affirmative. This is our second time debating together. So thank you for bringing such a good case onto the table. I heard this was being live streamed. So if there's anyone watching, thank you for watching, I guess. This is my first national tournament. So I hope everything goes as planned. So I will start my speech after I start my timer. Thank you. All right. Am I audible to everybody? Sorry. Yeah. All right. Okay. Before I begin with my criticisms of the affirmatives case, let me just go through what has happened in this debate. They gave us a definition, we gave them a counter definition, which they so woefully accepted, and I believe that we are running on that definition right now, and that definition is standing even until the last constructive and the last speaker. Second, we have to remember that this is a value round, that the value of this round is utilitarianism. That means whichever side of this house produces a better impact for a larger group of people, a larger group of people wins this debate. I just want to make that clear, because I feel that we are losing focus and we are diverting this from a value debate to another type of debate, which I don't think is a good thing to do. I feel like that must be remembered, that the value for this debate is utilitarianism, and that must not be forgotten. What did the affirmative give me in their second construct? They talked about a lot of things. They talked about how carbon footprint of meat, they talked about how the carbon footprint of meat is basically lesser than vegetarian food. They talked about how there are many meat eaters. They talked about how the meat industry can be changed to a localized industry instead of a large conglomerate of industries that exist right now, not only in the US but all over the world. And they talked about a lot of things. But first, when they talk about the carbon footprint of meat, we have to understand that anything that is required to be produced, anything that is required to be created, requires some sort of carbon emission to go to be exerted into the environment. I believe that exists both on the side of the affirmative and on the side of the negative, but it is our burden to prove that it exists on a larger scale on the side of the affirmative. And when climate change and when certain levels of large carbon footprints exist on the affirmative side, we automatically win this debate, because lesser carbon emissions means a better humanity, a better world for the population, a better life for everybody. In this debate, they gave us so many facts, a lot of factual information, a lot of which my first speaker contested, and also proved to you that most of these facts were outdated. They were from 2014 to 2015. We have updated facts which my first speaker also talked about. They haven't given us real life impacts, about real life reasons as to why eating meat does more good to an individual, to an entire society, not just an individual, to the entirety of a society that includes business, that includes individuals, that includes states, that includes the entire status quo, how this entire status quo is being impacted, and how impacted for the better if they continue eating meat. I feel that they have not done that in this debate. They talk about how we can locally raise meat. Oh, such an easy solution. If there's something that's happening in a big degree by international conglomerates, I repeat, conglomerates that own almost every single aspect of the meat packing industry, you want them to stop selling meat or selling less meat and letting their quotas go to localized businesses, localized industries. I do not see a future where this happens. It is not utilitarian when it's not good for society when these businesses that already exist in the status quo are already existing. I believe that when we're living in the status quo, that the affirmative is proposing from the beginning, I believe that does not exist, and these businesses will not let go of their business just because they want to do good for humanity. We as debaters have a choice to decide on what is better for humanity. These businesses have no choice. They only have a singular incentive of maximizing their profit and selling as much as meat as possible for as less cost as possible, no matter how inhumane that process is, no matter how bad that process is. We have to understand the perspective of these corporations and how these corporations will never aid to the betterment of society, rather to the downfall of it, because that is when they gain the most amount of profit and capital. You talked about how vegetarian diets have high risks and loss of vitamins, and yet you did not respond to our idea, our claim that there are vitamin pills. Let's say I don't know exactly for sure what vitamins they talked about. They talked about vitamin B and D. I don't know exactly for sure if they do exist in other plant-based substitutes. But in the best case scenario, which I'm not saying is probable, in their best case scenario, when they aren't available, I believe that there's already a system of research or a system of resource management where you can find out how you can get these vitamins through a location very close to you. And I believe that argument does not stand. And they did not interact with that at all. They just said, you can't find these vitamins at all. I feel like in this debate they have wildly mischaracterized our argument. They're talking about how we want a world where every single individual is a vegetarian, and if they are not, we will force them to be. That is anti-utilitarian, first of all, because it does not go for the betterment of society. We honestly believe in a flexitarian diet. Sometimes consuming meat is okay. It should not be the primary. It should not be primarily the product of your everyday eating, but a flexitarian diet when there is a need to do it, you can do it. But when you're looking at this from a utilitarian concept, if every single individual, I'm not saying this has to happen, but in a hypothetical situation, if every single person who eats meat today stops eating meat, in 10 years, the world will be a better place to live in. In 10 years, climate change will be lesser than what it is right now, because the carbon emissions that have been produced by the meatpacking industry are almost 60% of the total carbon emissions released by the United States of America and the global world. And we have to look at this from the context of the international world. In the United States, there is some regulation. In places like Nepal, India, South Asia region where I'm from, there is no regulation. And these meatpacking industries exist in small sheds in local neighborhoods, and that's all it is. And I feel like that creates a very inhumane idea of what the status quo is, what life is, what society is, and that does not further betterment our society, but makes our society go worse. And that is exactly what the affirmative has been proposing from their initial argument. That is all that they have given me. I feel like they haven't given us a lot to respond with. We stand under the idea of utilitarianism, and that is how we will be valuing this case, valuing this debate. Let me before I give you a reason why we win this debate, let me go over the case that me and my partner presented for you today. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about how this leads to loss of diversity, how the meatpacking industry is intrinsically inhumane, and they have not proven to us why these meatpacking industries are not intrinsically inhumane. These people who are stakeholders of these factories are the factory workers. These workers work on a daily basis, seeing tens of thousands of cows and chickens and goats being killed for the consumption of people. I feel that has an inhumanization aspect to it. It dehumanizes people to be more insensitive, to be not caring. I feel that directly affects the stakeholders of this debate, and when that happens, it makes the world a worse place to live in. And utilitarianly, it is not a good way to go about this debate. We talked about the loss of biodiversity, and I feel like the biggest clash of this debate is which side of the house makes sure that climate change is well addressed in the future. Their side of the house is talking about maintaining the status quo that has existed for the last 100 years, a status quo that has produced nothing but environmental disadvantage to our society, environmental bad to our society, making our society worse off in the long run. They are proposing the status quo. They are sticking with the status quo. They aren't asking for change. They're sticking with the status quo. All they gave us was make a pescatarian diet. But even in pescatarian diet, there is overfishing. There's a lot of bad things that happen even in that case. We believe that we win this debate because we provide you a better hypothetical situation of what the world is supposed to look like. We tackle climate change one step at a time, and we believe that we are the most utilitarian house in this debate. Never been prouder to be on the negative. Thank you.
Okay. So before I start my time, I'd like to thank everyone for being here. Hopefully there's some friends out there in internet land that I hope are having a good time. Thank you, Affirmative, for preparing a very fun case for us to argue against, and thank you, judges, for giving us some wonderful feedback. Without any further ado, I will start my time now. Okay, so I have two main voters for you today. First, the Affirmative has not presented that there are relevant, unique harms to vegetarianism. The burden is on the Affirmative to prove that vegetarianism is more bad than good. They have not proved any significant harm that vegetarianism has uniquely that we have not been able to successfully dispute. So first, they said that there will be bad physical health. This is something that we denied by saying, well, you can take vitamins. Well, you can also eat fortified foods, which are most vegetables in America. Second, they said that there is bad mental health correlated with vegetarianism. Keyword there is correlated, not caused. So maybe all of the people who are already vegetarian are more in touch with, feeling empathetic towards the animals that they would have to kill, making them more vegetarian, but also making them more anxious, more depressed. So this could be a pre-existing condition that causes both, not necessarily causation, which is something that the Affirmative has not successfully rebutted in any of their speeches. So, we have proved that there is an easy solution to most of these problems. Essentially, we've said that, there are solutions. You can take vitamins to help your physical health. Two, there's not really a causation from vegetarianism to mental health, and the affirmative, again, has not denied this. So, in addition to this, they also have old data. We have said time and again that their data is from 2015, 2019, and we have sources that are up to date from 2021, 2022. So they're using old data to try to prove that vegetarianism is somehow bad, even though they can't prove these points with data that they are bringing up. And then my second verdict for you today is that meat is bad and therefore not eating it is good. So we're saying that if you don't eat meat, this is going to be better. This is going to give you more benefits than it will harms. This is exactly what we've been arguing today. So first of all, it's bad for the environment. CO2, first of all, from all of the meat packing and transportation and emissions that come from that. We also have methane on top of that, which once it's been in the atmosphere for about 100 years, then it becomes CO2 and is there for even longer. So methane is much worse for the environment than CO2 emission, any CO2 emissions that would come from a vegetarian exclusive diet. So therefore, we can see that a vegetarian diet produces better alternatives.
Can you pause? We lost the judge.
Oh, okay, yeah. I paused my time at 1:28.
I hope he wasn't gone for long since he didn't have his camera on. There's no way of knowing. He could have been gone for 15 minutes or something before we knew. I would tell you to continue if I knew that this round was being recorded, but I only know it's being live streamed. It doesn't say record, it says live. So there's a possibility that it's not being recorded.
I agree. We should continue.
I'm good continuing if that's the consensus.
Is there anything? Oh. Oh, sorry.
The only risk we run is that we could have a one vote without a winner, if that makes sense.
That is true.
So I want the competitors to be
Because I don't think there's any way to contact the judge back, is there?
Yes, there is. I've already emailed the tournament director.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'd prefer to get an answer from them than just make a decision and then nobody gets a. With this being an elim round, it's important. Hey, Danny.
Hey, you can go ahead and continue the round. We have it on YouTube, so Jeff.
Okay, we weren't sure if it was being recorded. We just knew that it was being live streamed. We'll keep going. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, keep going, guys.
Okay, perfect. I am resuming my time now. Okay, so I'm in the middle of my second voter. Essentially, eating meat is bad, therefore not eating meat is good, meaning that there are more benefits to a vegetarian diet than there are negatives, which is our weighing mechanism for you today. So I talked about CO2 and methane emissions essentially being very bad for the environment, and they're going to stay there for a very long time to come. And then my second point under meat being bad for the environment is biodiversity. This essentially leads to a lack of diversification. This leads to monocropping, and that means that there's going to be more disease, pestilence. We're going to be highly dependent on these food sources, and that's going to be bad if something happens to them, which is more likely to happen. This also pushes things that live in native environments to extinction, or at least a threatened status. So again, this is bad for the environment if we want to keep our native ecosystems intact. And then my last point is that this is bad for people. It raises moral questions. Even if you hunt or even if you're a pescatarian, there are still animals being hurt in this. And this can hurt people's images of, eating meat or anything like that. So there are still moral questions that can lead people to be distressed over this. So that is my final point under that. So for these two voters, first of all, the affirmative has not proved any relevant, unique harms to vegetarianism. And two, meat is bad, therefore not eating meat or vegetarianism is good. I can only see a vote for the negative. Thank you.
Okay, just for the final speech, again, extending a thank you to our three judges and to the members of opposition, as well as to my partner for engaging in this debate. Starting time now. I'll first begin by addressing the points made by the negation team, and then circling back on case and stating the reasons as to why you should vote for the affirmative team today. Let us first take a look at their first point. They've stated that the carbon footprint and how this is an effect of meat eating and how it's larger on the affirmative side than the negation side. However, this seems a bit out of scope for our debate, as we're not debating on which side produces more carbon footprint, but we're debating on whether vegetarian diets do more harm than good. So regardless, if we're proving that vegetarian diets are resulting in a carbon footprint, then we're showing they're doing harm. So this only supports the affirmative's case, as if we're discussing carbon footprint and there is harm from a vegetarian diet, this only goes to support the case made by the affirmative team. Furthermore, they discuss the calcium and the loss of vitamins. However, it is imperative to mention that they've only mentioned one of them, calcium, as well as overall vitamin pills. They failed to address the other topics we've mentioned, such as iron deficiencies or the effects on glutamate, as well as blood sugar and hormone levels. These were all untouched by the negation team. These are imperative to our argument, as we're stating that these are essentially not as found in vegetarian diets compared to other diets. As a result, vegetarian diets do more harm as they result in a lack of these essential vitamins and nutrients. Also, again, going back to the resolution, this is vegetarian diets do more harm than good, not vegetarian diets plus supplements or vegetarian diets plus vitamins. Therefore, we're considering vegetarian diets on their own, not without these supplements, as outlined in the top of case. And this goes to most of their points, such as the biodiversity and inhumane. Again, this goes to the idea that they are debating that meat-eating diet is bad for both the animals as well as for biodiversity. However, there's a very weak link here to the resolution itself. The goal of negation, again, is to prove that the resolution is false, that vegetarian diets do more good than harm or equal good than harm. And they mostly talk about meat-eating diets and their disadvantages. Therefore, this does not tie strongly into the resolution. And this only goes to show that the affirmative case is winning on this because of their stronger links to the resolution itself. Finally, going into the three voters and the reasons to which you should vote for the affirmative team today. Firstly, we can see, as mentioned by the affirmative team from relevant sources, that there is a devastating impact on both the physical as well as the mental health of people engaged in vegetarian diets. We've seen that in terms of physical health, that there is an increase in strokes for men and women, 20% higher. And this is from WebMD 2019. We can also see 2022 that there is again this negative effect of the vegetarian diet on the physical health, whether it's the 33% increased risk of hip fractures or in general the loss of necessary vitamins and nutrients because of vegetarian diets. This ties into mental health. We concede that it cannot be a causation. However, the correlation is still very plainly evident. We can see there's a direct correlation between people who have vegetarian diets versus meat eaters. We've proven this through 3 different sources: Bon Appetit 2022, Medscape 2022, as well as Women's Health 2017. We've demonstrated that there is a definite effect on mental health and how there is a correlation between vegetarian diets and a decrease in mental health. As a result, this is, again, demonstrating vegetarian diets do more harm than good. Now, on to the crux of this debate. There seems to be a fundamental misunderstanding of the resolution on the negation side today. Again, they argue to prove the negation's duty is to show that vegetarian diets do either equal or more good than harm. However, their entire basis for their argument ties around the fact that meat eating is inherently bad. Now, this doesn't flow well into the resolution or into vegetarian as a whole, as there are alternative diets. For example, we could point to a pomegranate viral diet where you only eat pomegranates. Again, all of the evidence they mention can be tied to practically any diet. It's not specific to vegetarian diets. Therefore, they're not doing their duty of proving that vegetarian diets do more good or equal good than harm, because all of their counter contentions relate only to meat eating being bad. Lastly, we go to irreversibility with climate change. We've demonstrated through many sources that there is increase in energy, water, and global emissions, and how all of this is a direct result of vegetarian diet. For these 3 voters alone, we know that you should vote for the affirmative team today.